Okay, Shalom Aleichem. We are up to chapters. So this class is chapters 18 and 19 smushed in. Yes, last week we did 16 and 17, but we did 16 and 17. Today we're doing 18 and 19 like smushed together. They're really one inyan, and it's not particularly difficult. It's not particularly difficult information. But it's foundational. You could argue that maybe chapter 18 is the most fundamental chapter in Tanya. You could definitely argue that, with another couple of other chapters would be in the running, but it's definitely up there in the in the four most important chapters of Tanya, in my opinion. So I don't know if you remember, but last week we basically discussed the idea of creating emotions using our mind. And we said that there's two kinds of emotions. There's genuine, palpable emotions where the heart pumps differently. The physiology of the mensch is changed. You need a really powerful mind for that. Like Yoel and I mentioned this last week. Yoel and I were in Mexico a few months ago, and we watched Rabbi Daniel Katz, who has he's a Goyen mamash, and he's the kind of person who can generate real palpable emotions, not just in himself but in other people as well. But most of us don't have minds that are so powerful. We can't conjure up such rich, intense imagery. So creating a palpable emotion is not always realistic. Maybe never realistic. So then he gave us the second rate option, which is creating a conviction in the heart, or conviction. Really, it's a conviction in the mind, meaning, look, I don't feel it, but I know it's true and it makes sense. Like, we live a lot of our life like that. We're not like emotionally connected to the thing, but we know it's the right thing to do. Like, like learning with our kids on Shabbos afternoon. We're not into it, but we do it because we know. I mean, maybe you are into it. Sometimes you are, but we do it because we know it's the right thing to do, and we're very clear that it's the right thing to do, and that's enough to motivate us to actually do it. And that's Givoldik. That was chapter 17 in the Tanya, 16 and 17. That is mamash Givoldik. Do not underestimate it. Just because you're not like bouncing out of your kalim with actual emotions, that's very, very good. But now the Rebbe goes into the next level, which is the stage where you can't even do that. You don't even have the ability to generate a conviction, let alone an actual emotion. Now what? And the Rebbe here says, it's all good, don't worry, because we got you covered also with this as well. And he introduces what's called the Ahavah Mesuseres. Now, the Ahavah Mesuseres means the hidden love, the concealed love. And he basically jumps in with three questions. And I'm going to add like a fourth question, because he answers like, I couldn't see. They're the three questions he asked. The famous three questions are, what is the root of this love and what is it? That's one question. How can you inherit love? Because it's an inherited love. How does one inherit love? And how is fear nichlal in this love? And then there's a fourth question, which he doesn't answer, but he answers. He doesn't ask, but he answers, which is, why is it called a hidden love? Okay, so we're going to try and understand these questions. So number one is, what is the root of this love, and what is this love? What is it? It's inherited, but what does that mean, you inherit a love? How can you inherit a love? I can understand you can inherit a loving nature. Like if a father is very lovable, then the child, it's very reasonable to assume the child will be a loving person. But you can't predict what he will love. This is a love of God. So it's an inherited love. So how does that work with love? How do you inherit an actual love, not a loving nature? And how is fear nichlal in this love? Or how is yira incorporated or included in this love? And then my fourth question, which is not there, is, why is it called hidden? Okay, so we're going to try and answer these questions. So the root of this love, we're going to move quite quickly and say quite a lot of things. The root of this love, what is this love? So it's not really a love in the conventional way that we use the term love. Love is a midah. We have Ava and Yira. Yeah, that's quite low down in the system. That's emotional. That comes after intellect. So love can be described on that level. Love can be described. I think the best moshel for it is a little kiss. If you kiss, yeah, it's interesting. What do you actually do when you kiss? If you think about the actual, what is it? What you do, it's just like
Blowing out.
No, the opposite. It's a little suck. It's just a little suck. You suck in. That's what it is. It's interesting, by the way, because when you want to show distaste, you might go, you would spit out in a sense. It's very deep, very deep. A kiss is very deep in you. So really, that is love. Love is the idea of consuming X. It's not even you want to go to it. It's you want to bring it into you. I love pizza is not particularly different to I love my kid in when they're being really cute and you want to eat them. It's not actually a particularly different love. The love for our children is a different love, but that feeling of I just want to like eat you. I've heard women say that many times. Yeah, that's this idea of bringing in. It's making you more. That's very important. Love is not selfless. Bichlal. Love on this level, the emotion of love is I want to become more, and I'm going to bring you into me. I'm going to swallow you in a sense. Look at the Mishnah about swallowing. About if it wasn't for Malchus, it wasn't for the year of the Malchus would swallow each other. So this love is not like that at all. Okay, so a regular love is this isn't a bad thing, by the way. This is, I know I made it sound like a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. This is just what love is. It needs to be tempered with yira, and it needs to be expressed in the right place, etc. But this isn't like that at all. This love, this Ahavah Mesuseres, this hidden love, this latent natural love that the soul has for God, is a love where it wants to expire into God. The analogy that the Rebbe gives is of a candle. So in this world, you've got the gravitational pull where if I hold a stone, I hold my mouse and I drop my mouse, it falls down and it becomes more, it becomes more solid, more comfortable. Its existence has been solidified. It was falling through the air and it lands and it stops, and that's how gravity works. That's the things of this world. Whereas the candle, the moshel of the candle is flickering off of the wick and it's trying to pull itself off of the wick. Yeah, for two reasons. Number one, it doesn't want to be here. And number two, it's trying to go back to what's called the Galgala Aish, which is the makor of fire, whatever that is, some kind of stratosphere around the world, whatever. And it will be nichlal into that fire. And it will not, like, imagine you have a match, yeah? You light a match and you throw the match into the bonfire. Now try and point to that fire from the match. It doesn't exist. So it's not that it doesn't want to be more bichlal. It's the opposite, mamash. It wants to not be here, and it also wants to not be there. It's the very opposite of a stone. A stone wants to fall down and land and be whatever, but the candle wants to rip itself away from this. And that's the Jewish soul, and that's this love. This love is not a love of I want more. It's a love of I want to be nichlal into God. That's what this love is. So it's not really a love in the conventional way that we use the word love. Okay. So that's what it is. Okay. It's an attraction to its source where it will become nullified completely. That's what it is. Okay. And how can love be an inheritance? So the Avos, this is a very important idea. The Avos were not like good people. I mean, they were also good people. But the Avos were mamash a makava for the Rabbeinu Shalom. The Avos were mamash godly. They embodied Elokus. It wasn't that they were just acting in a godly way and they were good guys and the chule, yeah, that was also true. But they were actually the mahus of who they were was mamash godly, and that means their children, you and me, are also godly. Just like human beings give birth to human beings, and lahavdil, monkeys give birth to monkeys, and seahorses give birth to seahorses. So too, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, lahavdil, who were mamash elokus embodied, they were mamash godly. They have given birth to godly offspring. That's you and me. And just as a side point, the tos of the Noitzrim, by selecting one yid and calling him God, is not, I mean, it's, you know, they missed the mark infinitely, but it's not actually that far off. The truth of the matter, the way I understand it, is that really Am Yisrael is what they're, I don't think they're meant to worship us, but Am Yisrael is the inyan of God incarnate in this world as a nation. That's what Am Yisrael is. That's what it means, the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is the indwelling presence of God. The Shekhinah is the makor of Nishmas Yisrael, called Knesset Yisrael. That's God incarnate in this world. Isn't that what they say? They just say he came into one guy, but that's not correct. But what is correct is that the Yidden as a nation embody Hashem in his world. Okay, so when we say that we inherited this love, it's not that we inherited a loving nature. That might also be true as well. But we inherited the genes. We just like, you know, like if your dad's black, you're black. Yeah, our dad was godly, so we're godly. And that's this love. So it is an inherited love, and it's natural to the soul. Everyone's clear? It's clear? Okay. Now, how's fear nichlal in this love?
That's the question.
Yeah, sure.
So how do Yishmael and Esav fit into that?
So Esav's more complicated. I mean, Yishmael was from Hagar, so that's a little easier to answer up. I mean, I know there was a process of birur that went through, that it was the Mesuseres of Abraham that came out in Yishmael, and it was the Mesuseres of Yitzchak that came out in Esav. But the Esav thing's a very good question. Like, how can it be that you know he came from Rivka and you know from Yitzchak and Rivka, and his mama Sharasha Marusha? That's a very good question. I don't know the answer to that question. Yeah. So now, how is fear yira nichlal in this love? And again, it's a slightly different take on what fear is from the regular, like the conventional way that we use fear.
Western.
No,
Westernized.
really, it's the Tanya system of Ahavah and Yira, but the conventional way that we use Yira is this wanting to make a distance. And Ahavah, where Ahavah is I want to bring you to me, Yira is I want to remove myself from you. It's more, if you want to get really nuanced, it's not so much I want to push you away, it's I want to move away from you. That has nafka minas later on. I'm not going to get into that right now, but that's what Yira is. It's see, Yira, to call it fear is not, it doesn't do it justice, because the best way of understanding Yira in context of our human relationship with our wife is the the desire to give her space.
It's a reverence. It's an awe.
In a human relationship, in godly relationship, I think it's better to translate it as awe. I agree, but in a human relationship, the way Rav Taub explains it, I think is the best way I've heard, is he calls it a respect. It's the ability to step back and let her be, which is
Some people are just plain and push it fearful of their wife.
that could be. That could be. But the idea is that she, in a sense, becomes more real to you than you are to yourself. That's really the idea of fear, which means you back off and you give her space. So this fear is not like that. This fear is basically an intolerance, an inability, whatever, fear of having that connection to God broken. So he gives the example when someone puts a gun to a yid's head, and he doesn't say your religion or your life, because you shouldn't be religious. Chas v'shalom. That's the worst thing in the world. That if he says your God or your life, if he says your religion or your life, say take my religion, please. All I want to be is I want to be the most irreligious person I can be. I want nothing at all to do with religion. Chas v'shalom. So if he says your God or your life, or Shem Echad, or bow to the idol, then the fear of this love, meaning the fear latent in the love, this, what's the word? Not inability, this how to say inability like that to the nth degree, like not able to.
I didn't hear what you said. In
incapacity.
Not great. Better maybe, but not great. The inability, like, but I'll explain it. You're telling me the word. I need the word to explain it. You can't even imagine it. You can't.
Unfathomable.
Yeah, but it's the inability to bow to the idol means it's so repulsive to you. You couldn't imagine doing it.
Inconceivable.
Inconceivable, maybe that it's inconceivable. No, but that's not the noun of. That's like you're unable.
It means you can't even begin to think about it.
Yeah, exactly. You understand what I'm saying. There's a word for it. Well, anyway, but that's this fear that's nichlal in the Ahavah Mesuseres. You can't even imagine breaking your kesher to the Rabbeinu Shloim. You can't even imagine. So that's called the fear that's nichlal in the love. And that isn't a regular fear. Like I said, the regular fear is I'm giving you space. You're more real. You're mamash Mesuseres. That's why Yira is the foundation of our relationship with the Shem, not Ahavah. The Rebbe says that explicitly later on. That Yira is, because without Yira, you might not be in a relationship with God. Everyone likes to do stuff for people, hopefully. It doesn't take a big man to get off on buying his wife a diamond ring. Yeah, who doesn't like to buy his wife a diamond ring? If you've got the money, or you could do something. But to turn the air conditioning off when she's cold and you're hot, now she's a Mesuseres. That means she exists. So
you need the Yira to get to the Ahavah.
Or to say another way, it's love dafka Ahavah if there isn't Yira first.
There's no Yira, correct.
It might just be it might just be you just like buying stuff for people. I like buying stuff for people. Everyone likes buying stuff. Any healthy person would like to buy things for people. So the Yira is the place. But this Yira is a different thing. It's the inconceivableness of being dislocated or separated from God. And that's a natural thing in our soul. Now, to answer up why, because now the question is, well, I don't feel this. And this is the reason why it's called a hidden love. Because in us regular people who are primarily experiencing the world through the eyes of the nefesh of the Hamis, our default experience of the world is as a human being, not as of a Jew. Okay. Now, if we're zoicha to be davening a lot and learning a lot and involved in Torah and mitzvahs, then we might be able to be experienced in the world majority of the day through the eyes of the Jew. But minastam, our regular experience of the world is through our human side. Remember, Jew is a human being with a neshama. So you're a human, very much like a goy. There's differences, but not particularly different. Yeah, just like a treif piece of meat is not particularly different to a kosher piece of meat. It might be different to a Jew, but lemaisa, it looks the same, it tastes the same, it costs the same, it weighs the same, etc. Yeah, that would be a similar comparison. So our default perspective is human. And it's that default perspective of ours that covers over this love. And that's why it's called an Ahavah Mesuseres, a hidden love. So the Rebbe calls it's melubish and a lavush sak, the klipa, like sackcloth. It's covered in the shell of the klipa that our nefesh Bahamis comes from. Okay, so we don't experience it on a day-to-day level. That's why it's called the Ahavah Mesuseres. Okay, so we had our 3 questions. I'm sorry, I should just say 4, but it's important because the Rebbe really asked 3 questions, and I added on a 4th one, so I don't want to say. So we had like the 3 questions of the Rebbe, but the Rebbe answered like with a 4th question, a 4th answer. So I tell you this question. So basically, the 3 questions plus 1 were, what is this love? And we explained that it's a yearning to go back to God, to merge back with Hashem. We said, how can love be an inheritance? Because the avos were mamash godly. So we inherited, just like a human being gives birth to a human child, a godly being gives birth to a godly child. How is fear nichlal in this love? Because we're pasha mafached of having this kesher broken. And then why is it called hidden? Because our default perspective is human, and that conceals this love, because this love is coming from the other soul. By the way, just as a side point, this is the definition of gullus. This is a really important thing. This is worth waking up for, just to hear this. When I heard this for the first time, I fell off my chair. Definition of gullus is the inability to express yourself. Finished. Now, that means that kol zman we are doing averas or not doing mitzvahs, that means that our nefesh elokis is in gullus. Why? Because the nefesh elokis wants to express herself by doing Torah and mitzvahs. So if we're blocking her expression by eating pizza and going to nightclubs, she's in gullus. She's not being able to express herself. That's gullus. That's the problem in Yana de Yoma. What's the problem with these with the shavuim, the hostages? Why is that bad? Let's say they're not being mistreated. Let's say, I hope. Let's say they're not being mistreated. So what's wrong? It's the same in Yuna's prison. Their expression, they can't be who they are. They're being contained in a way that means they can't express themselves. That's the whole concept of prison, of being incarcerated. That's called gullus. And now we understand gullus hashchina. What's gullus hashchina? The cosmic level, this world is called, if you can say such a thing, the goof of Hashem. Yeah, the best way of saying it is it's called levushim. This world, olam hazeh, including all of the olamus, meaning all of creation, is called levushe Hashem. They're his levush. What's Hashem's deepest desire? Torah and mitzvahs. Kolzman, the world isn't being misnaheg with Torah and mitzvahs. He's not getting to express himself. Shechina's in Galus. That's called Galus Shechina. Simple. It's not an elusive, loose term. It's very, very simple, very clear. Kolzman, the world isn't living by the Torah, which really just means that the Jews aren't living by the Torah, because then everything else will fall into place. Kolzman, the Jews aren't living by the Torah. That means Hashem isn't being able to express himself into his world. That means he's in prison, so to speak. That's called Galus Hashchina. That's Galus. So it's the Indian of not being able to express yourself. That was a side point, but that's quite an important side point.
Just a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
Does that apply to our relationships as well? Let's say between a spouse, I don't know about a parent and child, but at least let's say a spouse. If one spouse doesn't feel comfortable expressing themselves, is that a galus of that relationship?
100%. 100%. And your wife is, you're meant to be expressing yourself through your wife. So if you're treating her badly, not you, if someone's treating their wife badly and she kind of clams up and goes neged him, then he goes into galus, because he needs to express himself through his wife is intrinsic. That's the goof neshama relationship. It's all the same relationship. The zocher nekeva relationship is kli or goof neshama, zocher nekeva, seichel midas, midas levushim ratzon. So every level where there's a mashpia to the makabel is the same inyan. It's just in different contexts. We use different, different symbols, different symbol, like whatever. Yeah. Okay. So now let's move into the next part of the class. So we're just putting these now. See, this is one of the most important. All of that was it was nice, but this is really the important. This is the reason why Perek Yud Ches is of the of the Ikar Prakim in Tanya. Is the Inyan of Mesuseres Nefesh. One moment. The place where this love kind of lives, it's not of the midas, yeah. The place where this love really lives is in Chochmah. It's not that this love lives in Chochmah. It's that the Rebbeinu Shloilem is present in our soul in the level of Chochmah. Okay, I'll explain why. The Chochmah is the makor of Seichel. So the cognitive mind begins at Bina. The analytical cognitive mind begins in Bina. Chochmah is not about understanding. Remember we discussed Chochmah Bina Das, and we described them as Chochmah discovers, Bina develops, and Das identifies. Okay? So what's discovering got to do with understanding? Nothing. Developing has got to do with understanding. Discovering is you find something. But I always think, I don't know if anyone saw that film Terminator, the original one? Yeah? From a few years ago. When he went back in a time machine, yeah? And after they killed him, actually it was in Terminator 2, they had like the chip. They found the chip from him because he came from the future. He went back into the past to kill the whatever. I'm not going to get into the story. The mice of the second one, they had built an entire company because they had found a bit of a chip from this robot that was from 50 years in the future, whatever. So they found this broken piece of a chip. That idea of just finding, like, imagine finding a microchip from a machine that's from 50 years in the future. You don't understand it, but you're like, wow. It's like you think about what happened at Kriyas Yamsuf. I always think about this. You know, we were all standing by the Yam, yeah. We had the Mitzvah coming from behind us, and there was a big matzav, yeah. And then all of a sudden, the sea starts to split. Like, what do you think people were saying to each other? They weren't saying anything. They were just like this. They're just looking. They were just, their minds shorted, and the youngest children were experiencing the same thing as the parents. They're just, there's no, you don't understand. No one knows. That's Chochmah. Chochmah's humble. Chochmah's an Anav, which means it's just looking to see. It just wants to see. It doesn't care about understanding. That's Bina. That's for Bina. Bina is chalashing to understand. But Chochmah just wants to see. So that's why Chochmah is Re'iyah, seeing, and Bina is Shmiya, is hearing. So that's why the Rebbeinu Shalom can exist in the Chochmah of our soul, the pneumius of the Chochmah of our soul. Why? Because you can't grasp Hashem. You can't understand God. No thought can comprehend God. You can't understand him with your intellect. You can see him if he allows himself to be seen. As in, you can see him, your soul sees God. Because you don't need to understand. It's like you can see anything. Obviously, you can't see God. It doesn't have a physical thing to look at physically. But what the way to understand Chochmah's relationship to God is that it's the part of your soul that sees him. It's genuinely aware. It's genuinely experiencing him. That doesn't mean it's like feeling stuff, like physiological things. It's just seeing. So that's a very intense connection. Mitzad Echad, Mitzad Sheni is very fleeting, because the minute the eyes disconnect, that's why we did the Chet Egel like a couple of days after Matan Torah, because Matan Torah was Kulu Re'iyah. We saw the sounds. It was Kulu Re'iyah. Everything was about seeing. And then the minute the sight gets cut off, if you don't now take that and run with the Bina and process it and bring it into your Kishka's mamash, it's just like it came, it went. That's so there's two sides to Re'iyah and Bina. They have an advantage and a disadvantage. The advantage of Re'iyah is while you're seeing it, it's, and I don't want to get into this whole thing now because it will take us too off track, but it's for another time. But to talk about Re'iyah and Shmiya, which is Reuven and Shimon, is really, really helpful and important. But the point is that the Chochmah of the soul sees God, to say, so to speak, sees God. The Bina of the soul can hear God, but that's not as real as seeing. Like, seeing is believing. That's what we say, and that's why Chochmah is the Pesach to Emunah. To call Chochmah Emunah, you can maybe do that, but the reason, see, Emunah. Now this is really important. We've got three kinds of Emunah. Okay, we'll call it Jewish. I'm making these terms up, but they're quite helpful, I think. Jewish Emunah. Let's call it belief. Jewish Emunah, human belief, and then blind faith. Let's call it like that. Yeah. I not challenge you. I recommend to spend a few moments and look for the proofs of Islam. Spend a few minutes looking for the proofs of the divinity of the Quran and of Islam. It's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic that people believe that. Like, nothing it's so, like, when you look at the proofs of the Torah, national revelation that's never been repeated, an unbroken chain of father son, Rebbe Talmud that's unbroken for 3,300 years, the festivals that celebrate on a national level, and constant the Torah saying in first and second person, you saw this, you experienced that, and like these very compelling proofs, yeah, very compelling. And then you listen to what they say about the Quran, you're like, that is mamish ridiculous. And most of them never even read the Quran. Most of them can't even read anyway. When you look at the 2 billion of them in the world, you know, a vast majority of them are even illiterate. So what's that? Is that faith? So the 3 levels of faith, there's Jewish faith, then there's human faith, which is very commendable. Then there is blind faith, which is mamish repulsive and disgusting, and it's the shoresh of what's going on in the world right now with these mamish crackheads. Yeah, that's blind faith. You believe in Islam, you could believe in whatever you want. Why not? I believe it's beyond reason. Believe in something beyond reason. So what's Jewish faith and human faith? So we'll leave blind faith out because that's mamish crazy. Yeah. So human faith, I wrote a little thing down. I'll read it for you word for word. Okay. By the way, you should know on the website on B'nai Aliyah, you can get access to all of the. I make these sheets each week. Like a lot of everything's written down in these sheets, and I hope it's quite. Should be quite. You know, there's probably a lot of mistakes. So I don't edit it, but it should be quite like full. Okay, so it says like this. For example, this is what we'd call human emunah. It makes sense that creation was created. That makes sense. And when I look around at the complexity and ingenuity of creation, I conclude, by way of deduction, that the creator must be intelligent. That's also a sensible thing to say. So being intelligent, I rationally assume that he created the world for a purpose. That also makes sense, yeah? Can I prove it? No, but it makes sense. It would make more sense than the other option. So that being the case, I now logically assume that he most likely at some point in history revealed his purpose to creation. Do I know that for sure? No, but if if there's a creator and it appears to me that he's intelligent, and intelligence does stuff for reasons, then it could be there's a good chance that he revealed his purpose to creation at some point. And assuming this, assuming this is the most likely scenario, I must now research the options available that claim revelation. Okay, so it doesn't mean that I now just believe in the Torah but I now have at least a reason to do some research. Clearly, the Torah, believed to be authentic by all world religions, must be the starting point of my research. If my research corroborates all my assumptions, I believe. That's called human belief. And not only is that commendable, but we as Yidden are chayav to have that belief as well. Don't forget, we're a human with a neshama. So the neshama believes at a level above this that we'll explain in a minute, B'ezrat Hashem. But that's all very nice for the neshama. But what about you? You need to research this. I got into this. I have a cousin in England. He's like an Ivy School guy who's a mamish and atheist. Like, he's more religious than most of the Yidden that I know with his atheism. And we've had this like 7-year backward and forward, thousands of, dozens and dozens, hundreds of pages of writing to each other, whatever. And I'm so grateful for that experience, because I got really clear. My human soul got to believe in God on a very human level, which is very important, very important. So that's human belief. Human belief is logic. It makes sense. Again, I recommend you to look into the proofs that they have for Mesuseres and for Islam. and to see just how based on blind faith they are. They really are. It's ridiculous. Their belief in God might not be. Their belief in good could be very much human, but the fact that they adhere to these doctrines and these whatever, that's very much blind. Yeah. So anyway, so that's human faith. Emunah by a Jew is what we said before. It's the fact that your soul sees God. Finished. It's not based in reason, bichlal. Just like when you're looking at someone, how do you know he's in front of you? That's a stupid question. Leave me alone. I'm looking at him. That's the faith of your soul. That's Jewish faith. And that you don't really have to do much to, you don't have to do anything to get there. You have to do things to remove the feeling of that, like that, to sink into your neshama. That's just there. Okay, the human faith takes a lot of research, takes a lot of backwards and forwards, of processing, of analyzing, of researching, etc. The Jewish faith doesn't take that at all. But the Jewish faith is immutable, and is, because my human faith, if I'm an open person, I could be open to being proven wrong. But you can't prove to me that I'm not looking at God. That's the Jewish faith. And that comes out that these two kinds of faith, Jewish faith and human faith, Jewish emunah and human faith, are what give rise to Jewish Mesuseres nefesh and human Mesuseres nefesh. And we've spoken about this many times, but to get this clear is paramount importance. Human Mesuseres nefesh is when you have identified with an ideology. Let's just make it simple. Call it an ideology. Human Mesuseres nefesh is when you have identified so deeply and profoundly with an ideology that your sense of self has become so enmeshed with this ideology that you can't tell the difference between yourself and the ideology. And if someone threatens your ideology, you will give up your life. That is called human self-sacrifice. And if that ideology is a good ideology, then you're doing well. That's great. That's a madrega. Huh?
I was just saying, but if not, you have Hamas and you have
it can go either way. Biduk. So if you're giving up your life because you've decided that ridding Africa of malaria is your purpose, and you will endanger your life to help these poor people not have to suffer, then that is a human being who has achieved the highest level of humanity. That's assuming that ridding Africa of malaria is a good thing. I'm assuming it is. Or like you have these Rishayim that we're looking at right now, who have identified so deeply with a shtuyot, with a rishus, that they're prepared to give out their life for it. That's the lowest level of a human being. That's human self-sacrifice. And in truth, there's nothing really, it's not really a self-sacrifice. It's really a self-preservation. What's happened is the person has now come to this place where his ideology is more real than his body. So I'm not going to give up my ideology. That's self-preservation. Jewish self-sacrifice, which is explained in Perek Yud Ches, is expressed by the Rebbe by giving the example of an unaffiliated, basically a secular Jew giving up his life. When a goy turns around to him and says, Hashem Echad, or your life. The Yid, ala roiv, not every time, but ala roiv, majority of cases, and even if it happens once, it proves the case. But in the majority of cases, there are things that can block this, okay? But in the majority of cases, put a gun to a secular Jew's head who's got nothing to do with Yiddishkeit and say to him, Hashem Echad, either bow to this idol or I end your life. And he will give up his life. Why? Because it's not optional. It's not what's the word? It's not an option. It's not
negotiable.
no, thank you. It's not negotiable. It's not negotiable. My soul is looking at God. And you're now threatening to break that connection. I am compelled to give up my life. And you know what the Rebbe says? What my Rebbe said, what Rabbanis said to me when he was describing this, is the guy could be being dragged to the gas chamber. Obviously that he chose that, thinking, why am I doing this? His conscious mind could be telling him not to do this. But the fact that his soul is seeing God and is being threatened, that's, remember we spoke about the fear being nichlal in the love, that's when this explodes. And the soul is now feeling so threatened that the soul basically trumps the rest of the system. So even though the thinking mind could be saying, don't be a nut. What are you doing? You don't care about God. You don't care about religion. You don't care about mitzvahs. The Yid could still be compelled to give up his life because it's coming from his soul's experience of God. That's lemala min hatam v'das. That's got nothing to do with logic. Everyone's with me? This is Jewish Mesuseres nefesh. So I'll just finish off by giving you he brings a couple of psukim, and this is the inyan, is think of Kedusha like a dial, yeah? On one end of the scale, you've got Paro that says, Ani v'afsi oid. And on the other edge of other end of the dial, you've got Moshe that says, Ein od milvadoi. The reason why a human being can't look at God and live, when we're talking not the way the soul sees it, but in a sense, but why Moshe wasn't able to look at God's face, only his back, is because if you were to look at reality in the face, mamash, you don't exist. You're a dependent reality. You're a what's it called, a Mesuseres efshari. So if Hashem was to show you true reality, by definition, you would not be able to see it because that it's you. You're not something separate from that. So as the dial is turned, it's either way. As you turn up the level of Kedusha, by definition, the Klipa and Sitra Achra just starts to dissolve away. It can't stand. It can't be. As you see that Hashem, the more you see Hashem Echad, the more you realize Ein Sheni, and I'm Sheni. So the more he turns up the dial of the Echad, the more the Sheni disappears. So the Rebbe he brings four psukim. Yeah, he brings chalakim of them, but I'll tell you the psukim. You can, again, I'm not going to give you the, you can download the thing if you want to see it yourself. Okay, the first one's from Rishiao. Kol hagoyim ka'ayin negdai. All of the goyim are like nothing to you. Remember, goyim and klipa are synonymous. Me'efes v'soyu nechshvuloi. They're like considered like nothing before you. Okay? Ki hine oivecha Hashem. That behold your enemies Hashem. Ki hine oivecha yoivedu. Behold your enemies, they will be lost, destroyed. And they will be dispersed, spread out, all of the ones who do bad stuff. And now it starts getting to the point. It's like it says, what does this mean? Nidoif. Nidoif ashan tindoif. Does that mean it like smoke gets blown away? How do you translate that? Tilim samaches. Ki hanidoif ashan tindoif. Anyway, the next point is that this ki himes doinag mipnei eish, like wax melting in front of the fire, like we say in Kabbalah Shabbos. Yeah, the next one. Rishayim mipnei Elokim. That the Rishayim, Yevedu Rishayim mipnei Elokim, like wax melting before the fire, is how the Rishayim will disappear by Hashem. Harim kadoinag namasu, and the mountains like wax will melt. Mipnei Hashem, milifnei Hashem, milifnei Adon kol haaretz. And we'll finish off by saying this. This is really, really beautiful. Is it says that in the end of days, Hashem's going to take off the Nartik, and his light's going to be visible for everyone. It says it's going to heal the tzaddikim, and it's going to burn up the Rishayim. The same ore. And we've just answered how that works beautifully. Why? What does it mean, a Russia? A Russia means klipa. A Russia means ani v'afsi oid. I am something unto myself. Ich bin a God. I am God, or at least I am a God. Yeah, that's what it means to be a Russia. That's like Rishus. So a Russia is a person whose majority of his reality is that. I'm a dava bifnei atzmai. I'm the sheni. We say, hu echad ve'ein sheni, except for me. I'm a sheni. So when Hashem reveals himself, if a person is ruboy, that disappears and he's destroyed. Whereas the tzaddik is healed. Why? Because the tzaddik still has a shemetz, a little bit of klipa, a little bit. So when Hashem reveals himself to the tzaddik, it heals him. It means it just burns off those little bits of self-interest. That's what that means.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
I have a few comments.
Please.
Just what you said regarding the you said in the beginning how fire blends into fire and you can't pinpoint, but an Evan is very different like that, right? Where it comes down and it creates its own. I just thought that was the godless of the rocks under Yaakov Avinu's head, was that they were able to come together and blend. There's something there. And there's also this whole Torah you gave over here very much brought me through
That's
the.
One second.
Yeah,
You have to write that down. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to. It's very important to write your chidushim.
I wrote it down.
Okay,
and
good. Very important.
I sent myself an email.
You have a book, and you should write down all your chidushim. Don't be lazy. Don't be lazy. Hashem gets huge nachas from you writing down your chidushim. I know that. Yeah, sorry, go on.
So a lot of the Torah you gave over here right now just reminds me of the Yud Gimel Ikarim and the Parshas Yira and Tshuva, because also Yira we talked about, and Tshuva, the etzem is what you were saying is Ahavah is. Because Ahavah is returning, essentially, as you want to return. That's a tshuva, right? So there are three parshas over there. I don't chop where Parshas Aman, Parnasa comes into the whole picture. So we did the whole Yud Gimel Ikram. We did the Ani Mams and what makes a Yiddish neshama a full belief, real belief. And we did all those. Fine, we walked through those. But how do we? What does the whole mun tie into all this?
Have to think about it.
Okay.
Shkoyach.
Shkoyach. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.